Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Namofsky. Today we're looking into how and why hybrid work kills women's careers. So Rita, before we went to break, we were talking about it in depth. I want to talk about the research. There's research that you were telling me that came out through Harvard Business Review. What does it say?
Okay, so the Harvard Business Review looked at a group of software engineers, and they used the findings from that to kind of extrapolate to the broader working population. And it's true that the research on this is still new, but they found that in particular, mentorship really suffers when people are not physically in the office together. And in particular, there's the biggest concern is for women. So female software engineers, when they're in the office, received far more feedback from various different sources on their work. There was a similar kind of trajectory for men who were software engineers too. They also received more feedback, but it wasn't such a big gap. And that's because men, it seems, even when they're working from home, are less, afraid to ask for clarification on job tasks. So it seems that really being in the office help women solicit more feedback about their work.
It's important that you talked about mentorship because we've done an entire episode on mentorship and how it's important for women. And when we hired our marketing coordinator, I made sure that he was in the office. I thought it was very important. And one important thing that he had said to me was when he was working from home at a previous place, he never got positive feedback. He knew when he did something wrong. He knew when they didn't like the job that he had performed, but he didn't know when he did a really good job. So let's go on to liability because there is liability involved here.
Yes. So there are a whole host of issues that, companies are trying to still wrap their, brains around. Okay. So one has to do with safety and security of data. So there's a thing called hush trips, hush vacations, where people who are supposed to be working remotely actually end up going on a secret trip.
Yes.
And so they're at an Airbnb somewhere and they're kicking back. And the argument is, if your work gets done, what's the harm in that? And so they might be on the Airbnb's Wi-Fi and they have the password, but the question is, who else has the password to the Wi-Fi router? And how is a company's corporate data being secured in that moment? There's also the question of, if you fall during the workday, is it a workplace injury? So there was a case involving an Air Canada worker who was a call center worker who was working from home. Mm-hmm. And this person left their workstation during their lunch break and then injured themselves in their home. And there was a question, is that a workplace injury if it happens on the person's lunch break? And in fact, it is, because it was one of these unpredictable events that that happened during the workday. But there's a lot of debate on, whether that, there's still, despite the ruling, there's a lot of disagreement in the legal community about, where the employer's liability begins and ends. Should your employer be required to provide you with ergonomic equipment in your home? So there's a lot to consider, and the liability issues that are there are creating challenges. I mean, another liability issue, if you're on vacation in a far-flung destination and you told customs, I'm there for a vacation, you actually don't have the right to work there. Who's on the hook legally for that?
Interesting. The other thing, too, is something I heard during COVID lockdown was people working from home because one of the partners was working at the head of the dining room table, the other partner was working at the other end of the dining room table, and they had to sign confidentiality agreements because you're talking to clients. And if you're talking about money or big deals or, initial public offerings or whatever it is, it's a lot of confidential information that is being shared at a dinner table.
Yeah, you don't want documents lying around. You don't want spouses or children or guests in your home overhearing confidential corporate information when you're on a video call, as an example. I mean, all of those things create risk. I mean, some companies don't even have tiered access to their computer systems. I mean, that's also a concern. So there are liability issues and safety concerns.
It's interesting you talk about working remotely. I had a friend who just came back from Europe, gone for 6 weeks, worked 1 week, 1 week vacation, worked 1 week, vacation. And that person said they would never do that again. There's a time change. trying to accumulate or accustom yourself to work and then play and work and play, this person said it was just too complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated. And, the bigger concern is, are women being empowered at work? Are they moving up the leadership track?
We'll be right back to talk more about working up the leadership track.